Okay, thank you. Welcome to the Sport and Rec Committee meeting, and thank you for those who were able to attend yesterday's workshop. That was very valuable. I know the staff found it extremely valuable for that. So I've got apologies from Councillor Edgar and Councillor Sanson and Madam Mayor. Can I have someone move that? Moved by Courtney, second by O'Neill Stevens. I'll put it. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? Carried. Confirmation of order of business. It will be as in the order we've got in here. Talking about just as you see, doing a bit of head count. We've got 9, and thank you for those who are online attending as well. But as you understand, quorum only accounts for those who are actually sitting. Voting is everybody, including Councillor Fulton and Councillor Noonan. The votes still count regardless of that, but quorum is so please, if you do need to go, don't be upset if you do have to zip out briefly. Just say, hey, can we adjourn for a moment? And that's just part and parcel of the day. So please, if you feel you need to go out for a quick break or relief, just put your hand up and say adjourn, please. Interests, I don't believe there's any interests here, but are there any interests specific to what's on the table? Public forum, there's no public forum, but I know we will have a few next that were to be today, but will be next meeting in May. I'll move to confirmation of minutes, pages 7 to 15. Thank you. So I have to move a true and correct record from Councillor Girk. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Brand. I'm sure there's no debate. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? Carried. And that takes us to the Chairman's report. Pages 16 to 17. I'll take that read, but I'll just quickly run through that. I think we've had a good summer, and it was interesting with a dry weather, and I thought it was handled extremely well, not just by council staff but by the public, being appreciative and taking their stride. And thank you for those adherences to that. And it was also a bit of a test for us with the new FENS and BUI system, etc., and some of that falls on us and how we manage those issues. And I thought it was managed extremely well, and thank you for the rain. Second year of Bay Dreams, that went well, but we've got that'll come up in our agenda shortly, a bit of the feedback from staff on that. We had, as some of you have seen, we had the World Champs for the World Golf Croquet, and it was pretty cool. It was right in the city centre here, just across from Anzac Park, and had various countries. I had the privilege to open that, officiate that. But New Zealand took the title, I believe. A Weet-Bix Triathlon, I know that's many of you follow that, and I'm always amazed at how many kids. I don't know where all the kids come from. There's 1,749 kids. I didn't realise there was that many kids in the Nelson region, but they're just loving it. Big grins on their faces, and actually one of the biggest was a young lad, 6-year-old, got a new event called the Splash and Dash, and 6-year-olds. And the 6-year-old came through, and he was still fresh as a flower when he came at the other end, and he had a good lead on, a big grin on his face, and his parents were real proud. But that was a very cool day. And I've been to a number of those over the years, and those who are running it are often from Auckland and Wellington, etc., but they're always very impressed with Nelson, and they actually love it. Also, another cool event was the Pups on Sups. It's dogs on paddle boards. And I've taken my cat on the kayak to the out in the Adawai Haven there, to the amusement to neighbours, but the cat loved it till he saw a few seagulls and he bailed after them. But the Sups on Pups, but that went really well, I believe. I think some of the staff followed it. Then they've got the Out and About strategy underway. Some might have seen, if you're walking through Queen's Gardens, the restoration of that, of what do you call that, the Priapus. That's looking pretty cool. Landscape seeding, the Coppermine Trail renewals are completed, or partly completed, and that part completed actually, and that was funded, which is way cool, from MBIE, or partly funded, I should say. Quite some good events coming up. We move into the winter seasons for various sports codes, and you see in my report here, sort of looking forward to those sort of kicking off now or shortly, but as you can see from the coronavirus, I see a lot of codes have pulled back and delaying 1 or 2 months, and I think it's just about all the codes now coming through on that. So as there's pros and cons to that, but maybe sometimes we can do some more maintenance on those fields, gives us a bit more time. But I do encourage people to make use of the sunshine and fresh air outside and make use of our facilities. The autumn colour just kicking in now, so that's another one of my favourite times. Spring and autumn, one of my favourite times, and there's some amazing areas up the Marsden, the Maitai, where you can see the plantings of generations gone by. Put some amazing trees in there with incredible colour. If you walk to the top of central New Zealand looking back down on Nelson, you suddenly see amazement of colour coming into shine. But that's enough from me on that. Is there any questions at all in regards to the Chairman's report?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I noticed you went to the Big Tauranga Ocean Swim, just that you know,
Cool.
that there was, I participated in that event. There was over 600 swimmers participated in that event. It's
Very
actually
good.
the smallest of the group, and it actually turned out to be the last one they had because the next three have been cancelled. So due to the coronavirus, but I have to say that the Nelson is probably regarded as probably the centre of excellence for open water swimming in terms that the group that swim here consistently are winning at the national titles. In fact, six of the did the Akaroa one and this one here, and I think Nelson Swimmers won 6 of the first 10 places.
Oh, wow. Thank you for that, Brian. No, that's really cool to see. How do you do yourself? Because you're a keen swimmer.
Yeah, I help make up the numbers.
I've gone and watched a few of those. I'm not a great swimmer, but I was always impressed how well they go against the outgoing tide. They still
Yeah, my arch rival beat me by 12 seconds.
Very good. No, thank you for that. Hey,
Chair, your reference here to Bay Dreams in 4.13, you mentioned, and I'm delighted to see it, that expenditure in 2021 was 2020 was approximately 89,800 against a budget. Income received was 168,500, and also 4.14.
well, no, thank you. I see you.
Yeah, hit yourself.
That's cool. I like you make the link with my chairman's report on that, but we are about to go on to that. Yeah, and we'll.
Well, I just want to say I'm pleased we're self-funding.
Oh, thank you. No, I think I appreciate how you link that to the chairman's report to that quite nicely.
Yep.
It moves us on quite well.
Yep.
Thank you for that. So can I have someone move to accept the chairman's report? Councillor Brand, second by Councillor Boulder. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. That moves quite nicely. Thank you, Councillor Courtney.
Shall I repeat what I just said?
Bakery. I'll get you hold off just a moment, but we've got some staff to present that. But I know we've got this. I know you've taken this as read, but I do ask the staff just to go over a little bit of detail on that because I know it's of interest.
Can I just introduce Paula? Would that be right?
That'd be good, actually. Thank you, Roger.
Briefly, through the chair. Many of you have already met Paula Robertson, but this is Paula's first time presenting a report in the council chamber. Paula is our project advisor for major events in the events team. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, thank you, Roger, and thank you, Paul. You've obviously made a good presence because I just assumed you've been here for a while, but I know you're fairly new to the team. But thank you.
Good morning, councillors. The purpose of the report this morning, I will assume it's been read, but to receive the review of Bay Dreams South event and note that officers will enter negotiations with Bay Dreams South Limited to move forward in 2021. Just noting on the report, and I'll just provide a little bit of background as through the chair as mentioned. Bay Dreams was a highly successful event in 2021. It was actually stated that Bay Dreams potentially was one of the safest and most successful events in 2021 from an emergency services perspective with lead agencies, and noted how well council worked in collaboration with those agencies to provide a really successful, safe outcome for the Bay Dreams event. The venues were all managed really well moving into Bay Dreams. Camping, as noted in the report, was just moved to one location at Rutherford Park this year and made the event really compact and fantastic to manage for our emergency services and everyone involved, particularly council as well. It was great that we could just focus on the one location and kept all of the ticket holders and festival goers within town, which was fantastic for retailers. and as noted by retailers, they did feel a significant economic impact from the Bay Dreams Festival. The Trafalgar Party once again hosted the pre-party and the after-party, and that was successfully presented. The pre-party was around 2,500 and the after-party was just under 1,000. As noted, shade tents were a priority this year and provided, and also the hydration stations made a fantastic contribution to this year's event, with watching patrons fill up at the water stations around, and with the compostable cups as well. Just moving into that, the waste management was noted as well. 61% of waste from the event was actually stopped from going into landfill, which is fantastic. And not that we have any conclusive evidence at this stage, but we do think it's probably one of the most sustainable large events at current in New Zealand, which is very impressive. We have some fantastic photos as well, just based on what was going on behind the scenes. Some of the highlights I think are probably that council expenditure has reduced, and we did decrease our direct expenditure as well, and our staff costs also reduced significantly, which was fantastic. The reason our income had changed from 2019 to 2020 for a couple of reasons. We did increase our contract fee moving into 2020. We did also increase our percentage fee on non-alcoholic beverages and food and camping per head. And once again, our staff costs also decreased by just over 50%, which is a fantastic highlight moving through. Does anyone have, council, any questions through the chair?
Thank you. I'll just, I've got a few here, but I'll just also, I've acknowledged Gail's had a question online, but I'm just checking that Councillor Fulton is reachable. Is she still online?
She's online.
Cool.
Can't hear terribly well.
So I can see what I'll do is I'll get somebody to help me, because it's just on my peripheral and I'll look him in, but if Pete or someone could just put a hand up, just point at Gail. But Councillor Fulton, I'm not sure how we can be acknowledged when Councillor Fulton has a question. Is she coming through audibly? Okay, thank you. Cool, so I'll get one of yours to. Very good, thank you for that. So first up, I've got Gail, then Matt, then Mel.
Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. I didn't catch the officer's name.
Paula Robertson.
Paula, thank you, Paula. Thank you for your report. I just need to raise a couple of issues that occurred, which I have written to the staff about, and that was, and I guess it's covered in the report, although at 4.7 it says over the duration of the event that some complaints were made, but the particular one that I was involved with, or someone approached me about, was after the event, so I'm just feeling that it wasn't covered. And that was some of the patrons urinating in private homes in their entrances, down the fences and on the footpaths, which they found quite distressing. I need to say that at the time the organisers were fantastic and addressed it. So I think the concern is about moving forward and how that's going to be eliminated. And I'll let you do that, and then I've got one more.
Thank you for that. Any commentary?
Through the chair, looking at continuous improvement with Bay Dreams South, they have showed significant improvement from 2019 to 2020. They have been very collaborative in their approach to working together with council. We have addressed it with Andy Gollings from security, from Red Badge Security, and we are looking at solutions moving forward into 2021.
That's really good to hear, and I'm sure they'll be very relieved. The other thing was that pre-Christmas at the meeting, the residents requested a post-event meeting, and that hasn't been held as yet.
Through the chair, Bay Dreams South were happy to attend any debrief or any community meeting, particularly for the residents. We didn't actually receive any formal complaints until late in February in writing, so at that stage it didn't appear that we actually needed to provide a community meeting, but they will be looking to move forward into contract negotiations, and I'm sure that we could organise a meeting when Bay Dream South are down, moving forward into the June period.
That would be great. I think that will save any people, that'll give them the opportunity to speak out rather than have to put something to write. And this particular lady doesn't have a computer, so she can actually write a letter, which is very unusual nowadays. Thank you very much. Thanks for that.
Thank you, Gail. I've got Matt, Mel, Rohan, Pete, Brian.
Thank you through the chair. Thanks for the report. The first Bay Dreams, an issue that emerged was people buying cheap camp gear, tents and things, using them and then just leaving them. Did we have the same problem this year?
Through the chair, no, the problem was identified from last year, and a company was actually engaged which was made up from Habitat for Humanity and another organisation for tent recycling. They actually come in with any tents that are left behind, and the tents that can be packaged, they clean them thoroughly, they repurpose them, and they go back to the homeless community or go into Habitat for Humanity to be resold.
Right, that's very good news. And any indication as to what the benefits were economically to the city at this stage compared to the previous year?
Sure. Through the chair, we haven't got the economic impact studies back yet. NRDA are working on those at the moment, but we will publish them as soon as possible.
Right, do we have a sense that they're the same, bigger, any sense?
The sense is it is looking bigger for this year.
Really? Fantastic.
But we haven't actually, as I said, got those figures confirmed yet.
Awesome, quick comment, thank you. The fact that there were only 3 complaints and we had a massive all-day music festival in the middle of our city, and unlike the first Bay Dreams, this year they didn't run out of booze, tells me that there's a great deal of community support for this event, and I think well done to everyone involved, including the neighbours for having to accommodate all those people in their backyards.
Thank you for that. I mean, there's always areas for improvement, and the organisation are very willing to make those improvements. I was also very much impressed at how well the people moved through. You've got 20,000, you've got a couple of thousand living out, and the movement down the streets, coming in and out, was well organised, orchestrated, however you want to put it. But moving on to Mel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through to Paula. Thank you for your report, an excellent report. Do we have under the contract with Bay Dreams the facility with provision to revisit the contract fee annually? I mean 2 yearly as it comes up?
I'll let Roger answer.
Thank you through the chair. Yes, we do. So the contract fee isn't set for the entire 5-year period. The contract provides for the council. It's a first right of renewal, but it's subject to performance, and that we're happy with the way it's turned out. Then we get into a negotiation about what the arrangements, including the fee, will look like for the next year.
Just make a comment, Paula, too, and say that this is going to be well received, this report, by the public, because they believe that it's important to have these events and they support them, but they want them to stand alone and break even, so to speak, and not to be a burden on the ratepayer. And you've turned this around in a very short space of time, 1 year of learning, and then we have a result like this, which is excellent. It's showing a profit, if I'm reading this correctly, and even to break even would have been acceptable, but the fact that we've actually showed a profit is commendable, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Rohan, Pete, Brian, and then a couple more after that.
Thank you. First, I like to think I'm quite connected with the youth in Nelson, and I've heard nothing but positive feedback from them, as well as I know I saw a number of councillors having a great time, some good photos of Councillor Skinner after the event, and glad to see that level of waste reduction that we saw. Do we have further goals for reduction moving forward?
Through the chair, yes, we are always looking for continuous improvement. It was very evident in the event space that waste management and using compostable items and increasing that to an absolute capacity is incredibly important.
And do you think we could expect a further reduction in those council costs for future events?
We would like, through the chair, we'd like to see a further reduction. I think at this stage, that would possibly over the next couple of years.
Yeah.
I think for any event, you need to be investing to grow substantially. So I think, to actually have a profit within 2 years is quite amazing for an event of that size to be sustainable.
Yeah, well, thank you, a fantastic job.
Thank you, Rogers.
Thank you, through the chair. I just wanted to make a comment on the financials, and I think in terms of the direct costs, we are more than breaking even. But just to be clear, I think by the time we factor in the internal staff cost, as we've discussed in previous years and for other events, sometimes it is a little bit hard to demonstrate that all of their revenue covers all of the costs across the whole organisation. So I just want to be realistic about that. Council does involve itself in a lot of events, and it's not just a straight case of aiming to make a profit. But I think we can demonstrate here that all of the direct costs that we've incurred, including the project manager for the event, are covered by the revenue. And in terms of the waste, I must say Bay Dreams really responded well when we said to them in the contract negotiations that we want to hit best practice in New Zealand and set a new standard, because bearing in mind the climate emergency that was declared, we spoke to them about just breaking some new ground, and I know that they're keen to help try and take us, another big step next year as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. We've got Pete, Brian and Kate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got a few questions. I'm a little confused about the figures, expenditure and income regarding council. So could Paula, could you give me some clarification, or Roger, whoever wants to, but in 4.13, it says the expenditure was approximately 89,800 and that income received was 168, but then in 414.2 it says, hang on, I'm in the right one, staff time, internal staff time was 120,600. Well, is that in addition to the 89,800? In which case that's that means we weren't actually making a profit.
Thank you, through the chairs. Yes, so that goes to the point of my previous comment. That 89,000 against the budget of 134, so that was for direct costs, things to do with the project. So clean up, legal fees, project management costs, I think it's some of Paula's time, and those sorts of reseeding the grass at Trafalgar Park. So the direct costs of the budget, of the project. We put in what we think the internal staff costs across the organisation, people in the having to do a bit of traffic management, having to do some comms and that sort of thing. We got them to account for their time so that we could capture it, but it's not against that. And that goes to my earlier point. These events, whether it's assisting TRU to host a Marco's final, or assisting with All Blacks games, or ODI, those sort of functions, we have staff time involved in all of those events, but we're trying to be as transparent as we can.
Well, thank you for that, through the chair. So we're in a position now, and I applaud staff at being able to reduce costs and to have a more clear picture about this. However, we are in a position where we're potentially entering into another contract with Bay Dreams. Could we not dial into that contract guaranteed profit, so to speak?
Thank you, through the chair, and it's a little bit hard to get into a lot of detail in a public meeting, and appreciating that with these things there's potentially a competitive element involved for others who might potentially host the event. So that's essentially where the tension is, and I know exactly what you're saying, and our objective is to maximise the revenue, minimise the cost on council. I wouldn't expect that we would close the gap quite so quickly based on previous negotiations. Thank you.
Thank you for that, and further questioning through the chair. I appreciate that, and excuse my naivety, but can you explain to me what why is it a contract and not just a hire agreement for Trafalgar Park?
Thank you. Through the chair, there isn't much difference in the sense that our hire agreements or our booking forms for those facilities encapsulate very similar terms and conditions, but this is a multi-year event, and we introduced a lot of other elements into our expectations, which are just not covered by our existing hire forms for Trafalgar Park or Trafalgar Centre. So that's why it was a contract, and it's a multi-year contract.
And just one last question, thank you, through the chair, and this may pertain to the next item on the agenda. Paul, you can probably tell me this. Can you tell me whether the main stage for the event is owned by Bay Dreams or whether they hire it?
Through the chair, my understanding is they hire the main stage.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. I've got Brian, then Kate.
Thanks, and through you, Mr. Chair. I was just looking at paragraph 4.9 when it talks about, I'll just bring it up, St John dealt with, I think, 506 cases of whatever they dealt with, patients, and the police arrested 4 for drunkenness, disorderly behaviour at the travel. Do we know what the nature of those treatments were?
Through the chair, yes, St John's provided and DHB provided an incredibly comprehensive report. They kept data of every patient being triaged and what they were being treated for. They kept age groups, lots of information, so they would have that specifically moving forward. Around 70 to 80% of people being triaged were for blisters and headaches and minor cuts and abrasions.
So 77 blisters,
Headaches,
minor
cuts and abrasions,
yeah,
and being intoxicated, obviously.
and it included that figure?
Yep, absolutely.
What was the other 30%?
Look, there was some other issues going on for people. There could have been a number of things. I can provide the information, the data, if you like.
Yeah, some of the feedback I've had since then has been that the use of probably substances of whether it's anything from legal substances to ones that are not so legal. And I'm just wondering about the impact of that on St John and subsequently after the event. And probably what I'm driving at is we've got some really good data now in terms of this year and feedback subsequent to that. I'm just wondering about our views about know your stuff and doing drug testing at the venue and whether we actually insist on that as part of the negotiations. I'm just wondering a view.
You start.
Through the chair, those decisions will actually be made moving forward into next year, and my understanding is that will be done by the Ministry of Health in conjunction with police. They will be choosing at random particular large major events. My understanding in New Zealand at the moment is they won't actually be specifically identifying particular events. They will be done randomly as they obtain a more accurate amount of data. So in relation to your question, through the chair, there was a very small portion of St John's patients triage in relation to drugs. They were treated, they are treated, and that's how it is actually handled through any triage situation. I can provide the data for you. It's actually quite interesting because, the majority was actually just small cuts, abrasions, and I think a broken wrist. Yeah.
That would be very, very useful. If we're going to be responsible hosts, and people come to our city and would like to send them home again in pretty good nick.
Thank you, Brian, and I was just go along to some of those emergency meetings, briefings before and after, and that was covered quite a bit, some of what potential you're talking about, and it was interesting, some of the feedback, but I'm sure staff will be happy to give a bit more detail on that. Thank you, Brian. I've got Kate. Councillor Fulton.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Councillor Skinner. I have 3 questions through the chair. My first question is, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, hopefully. Great. My first question, first of all, congratulations. What an amazing event it was. And the feedback I had, I attended with my 20-year-old daughter and probably 20 of her friends who thought that it was an amazing day. And much better than the year before. So it definitely improved, and lots of their improvements were as a result of the feedback from the last event. So well done on picking that up from internet. So my first question was around zero waste, and firstly, it was just fantastic to see water being given out freely. There was heaps and heaps of water available. People kept really well hydrated, and all of the cups were compostable, which was also wonderful to see. Into the future, will Bay Dreams be looking at reusable plates and wash down stations, which is the first initiative? I think it's Waste No More. We had it happen at Opera Park.
Thank you, Councillor Fulton. You can still hear us?
I couldn't hear you then. I couldn't hear the answer. I can hear you, Councillor Skinner.
Okay, very good. I'll pass it over to Paula.
Through the chair, Councillor Fulton, I just couldn't quite catch the end of your question, I'm afraid.
Okay, so my question was, so at Opera in the Park, we had, I think it's Waste No More, we had the reusable, all of the stall holders had reusable plates, and people were taking their plates to a central washdown station so that they could be reused. Is that going to be able to be implemented at the next Bay Dreams?
Yeah. Through the chair, unfortunately at an event that size, it's just not possible at this stage. Waste No More provide the fantastic wash stations, but they're only feasible at events of a capacity up to sort of 8 to 10,000 people. At an event over that, they don't have the facilities to actually cope with the numbers. If we could provide that, that would be fantastic, but I think moving forward we will work towards the zero waste, and as soon as there's a wash station or wash stations big enough to cope with a crowd of that size, I'm sure they would definitely look at it.
Thank you, Councillor.
Okay, thank you. Yes,
sure.
That makes sense. Maybe it might be able to be mixed into the future and then transition. My next question was around alcohol, and it was really great to see Bay Dreams had brought in, I think it was their own brand of RTDs, which were low sugar and a much healthier alternative. Certainly the younger people thought that they were a far better beverage than what was on offer at the previous Bay Dreams. How did Bay Dreams feel that went in terms of a product, and what was the DHB feedback in terms of alcohol consumption at the event?
Through the chair, the DHB were very happy with how alcohol was managed. Also, the Licensing Commission were very happy with the way that the event went. Behind the scenes, there's hourly meetings and things taking place which are all monitoring how that's going and what the response to the crowd is. Alcohol begins to start to be reduced at different points throughout the night, but overall the District Licensing Commission and DHB were incredibly impressed with how the alcohol consumption went on the evening.
Fantastic. Yes, I certainly observed that there seemed to be very moderate alcohol use, and the younger people were really enjoying themselves but not drinking excessively, which was fantastic to see. My last question is around vaping. It seemed that there was some vaping being promoted at the event. There was a stall offering vaping products. Were staff aware of this? And for the next Bay Dreams, will our new smoke-free policy be up and running and applied for the next event?
Through the chair, at the moment vaping is quite hard to police. There isn't actually any legislation against vaping. We did have signs that stated no vaping, no smoking. There were areas dedicated just for vaping and smoking. At an event that size, it is quite hard to police vaping if there isn't actually legislation to enforce it. We weren't aware until late in the piece that there was any products, and the advice moving forward for this year will that there will be no vaping products at all.
Okay, thank you. Did you say, I missed what you said, so at the next event there will be no vaping products promoted at all?
Correct.
What you said?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Forden. Just from me, more feedback, noise, just so I know that they keep within the consents of a noise similar to Opera in a Park, etc. And it was great during the event. I didn't get any phone calls during the event like previous about noise, but saying that, to be fair, there were some in other parts of town, the way that the noise, the bass moved around was of concern for someone. I know we changed, or there's a change of the three stages, which is actually great, not just two, we had three, well, they had three stages, and I loved that third stage was more of a under the trees, which didn't work very well, but I felt it must be fair to feedback on the noise issue. Any commentary on that?
Through the chair, they had a sound engineer who was present for the whole event and the sound checks. He was maintaining sound continually throughout the evening, and there was not one noise breach throughout the entire event. So.
Thank you for that. I've just, which I understand that we've just got to be conscious of, but there's obviously an event with sound and music that was due to atmosphere or so forth. Sometimes that sound carried further and louder, you'd expect in little pockets, etc. But if we can just keep working on that.
Yeah. Through the chair, I think it's that area is very subject to environmental conditions as well, depending on the direction of the wind. There's a whole lot of environmental factors, unfortunately, that play to that as well. But they absolutely engaged, and their sound engineer was incredibly professional, and they kept their sound commitments as contracted.
Okay. Thank you for that. So no, well done to the team and of council staff. I know we worked very hard before, after, and during, and obviously well done to Toby Burrows and his extensive crew on that. And as I say, as much as it's been very positive, there's always areas we can improve and make it work better. So it's good having the feedback, both critical and positive. Thank you. Councillor Bowater.
Yep, just a quick bit of feedback too, and it's just Unxtable. McDonald's, it was their big star of the year. So Matt, Councillor Roy, and also too, Z Rutherford was absolutely wrapped. So that area of town. So if there's any businesses around, Chamber of Commerce feedback as well, the NRDA, but yeah, it was very positively received within businesses in town, just through the chair, but thank you.
Cool, no, thank you. I enjoyed it, and I was even mistaken for Tyler, the Creator, true story. And I was impressed by young people coming to me. It's great to see you and your wife. My wife was there. I thought it was my young girlfriend with me. And that's why I said, I wish my parents would come. And that's when my face dropped, and I thought I was sort of in the age bracket. But cool. Thank you for your report. And obviously there's a lot of interest. We'll take a bit of time on that, but I think it's well worth. Can I have someone? I'll move this, but basically it's accepting recommendation and noting the advice we've given back. I'll assume there's no debate.
I'd like to debate.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. Okay, very good. Thank you for that. Thank you, Kate. Thank you. I'll just hold for a moment. We've got to mover and seconder of that. Can I have a mover? I have a number of hands there. Councillor Rainey, Councillor Bywater, thank you. We're moving into debate. Thank you. Councillor Noonan.
Thank you. Yes, I support the recommendation to go into negotiations for the next year. Look, any event of the size that's being held is going to have some issues, and I'd have to say that the organisers have been exemplary in the way that they deal with issues. They've never backed down from issues, and I really appreciated that as a neighbour. And I think that you know, if people running this sort of event can be that responsible and take into account people's concerns, I think that puts me in high regard of them and the way that they operate. And I think it's appreciated by the general public. I think that, there's a lot of disruption for surrounding people, and it's an accepted, there's a certain acceptance and tolerance of the interruption. But I think it's, if you ask anybody that's affected, they are certainly appreciative of the organisers. So I'm very happy for the staff to go along and do some negotiating for the next.
Very good, thank you. I'll put it. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you. Moving on to the next item on pages 22, which is Key Facilities Review, Trafalgar Park. So I realise the last one was just a report. This one's probably a little bit more gutsy, but we're just conscious of time as well, so if we can keep our questions specific. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Pepperam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, councillors. Just for background briefly, the review came out of the long-term plan, and the purpose of the work was to assist council in considering future investment of these facilities. The purpose today is not to debate the timing nor the value of the projects, but merely to refer them to the AMP process for further consideration. Just note that the aspects that relate to Saxon Field have already been dealt with through the Saxon Field Committee. So today we're only talking about those that relate to Trafalgar Park. So any questions?
Thank you for that.
I'll be happy to move the report.
Okay. Just so there's any other questions there? No, I'll just take a question. Councillor Rainey, Councillor McGirt.
Questions and comments really. There was nothing I could see in here of, or maybe I've missed it, in terms of investigating the demolition of the eastern stand, or the terminology that we would like to potentially use, which is deconstruction, because there must, well, I would be interested to know whether there was any value in the timber in the eastern stand.
Yes, councillors, there is the intent to investigate demolition of the eastern stand, and that's one of the recommendations.
Yeah.
And we'll do that we'll do that investigation fairly early on, and it would include consideration of the cycle track. And of course, there's a lot of quite good timber in that eastern stand. There's a lot of good totara, which would be considered as part of that.
Thank you. Subsequent question or subsequent comment, in terms of point 2A, in the recommendation, continue to invest in temporary facilities provided solely for the duration of events. I would like some consideration to be given to staging as opposed to seating, because since we purchased the temporary seating, I'd be very interested to know some of the figures on usage, as opposed to the number of times a temporary stage has been erected, which are either paid for by council or by external users like Bay Dreams, hence my question from the last item. So it could well be time for the city to consider owning a temporary stage. So if that consideration or somehow could be, I don't know whether it fits in or not, could you?
Councillors, if council chooses to add that to the recommendation, then we can make that a consideration through the AMP as well.
Okay.
Well, it is covered by what you've got written there. Continue to invest in temporary facilities provided solely for the duration of events. I think it covers it.
Okay.
I would just like to point out that doesn't necessarily mean seating. Is that sufficient?
Thank you, Councillor. I actually agree. I think it's a good point you've raised. Does it cover, does any issues, does it cover, do we need to be more specific, or do you think it's any issues in investigating that?
Councillors, I think we missed that point, so you may wish to just add in there, including staging.
Okay. I'm supportive of that. I can't see anybody concerns with that. If there was a bit of wording or so forth, do we need? Okay. Thank you, Councillor Noonan. Do you have some clarification of the request?
Yeah, that wasn't, some of the conversation is being eliminated with the system that we're using. I'm just not sure what Councillor Rainey wanted to propose.
What it was, but I'll get Councillor Rainey to correct me, was not just the seating to investigate, but the potential for a stage that we or users hire and put up a stage, that we would investigate something more permanent, is that what you're saying, or something that we own, or, is that correct?
Well, my rationale is that the seating facility has enabled multiple users, generally the TAU, but multiple users to consider events at Trafalgar Park because it's there. And even though it's temporary seating, it's permanent temporary seating. Similarly, especially in summertime, the ability to have staging for both council-run events and to be able to offer to other promoters, I think would be advantageous. And it's just something to consider.
To include investigation?
Absolutely, I think we should.
I think there's good support on that. Does that answer?
So just to reply back, just to make sure that I've understood, it would actually fit under 2A on the recommendation, is that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Very good, in the red, thank you. I've got Councillor McGurk, Councillor Bowater.
Yeah, thanks, through you, Mr Chair. I think Councillor Ray's probably raised the issue that I was sort of thinking about. I'm just wondering about, I'm looking at the report, paragraph 3.7, 3.71, and then the comments from the Tasman Rugby Union 3.8. And I'm just wondering, is there a case there for, there are probably some facilities, regardless of what happens, that we will probably look for a permanent one, and they highlight sort of the sound system, and Councillor Ray is talking about the staging. Is there a case that we should actually start thinking about some longer term investment in the facility, regardless of what is being suggested in terms of the temporary facilities?
Councillor, that was really the purpose of the review, whether we should continue with the temporary provision or consider purchase. And a lot of the temporary overlay works quite well because it's not used usually during the year, and sound, for example, continues to improve. So at this stage, it wasn't felt that it was necessary.
Okay, thank you. Right, now I'll leave it.
Thank you, Councillor Bowater.
Thank you, through the Chair. Mine probably is the follow-on one about purchase and charge usage of the grass surface covering. So could that be included in the staging? And you've got staging, can we find out about that as well?
Yes, councillors, that is one of the facilities that we are considering at the moment. We need to look at what it costs to hire versus what it costs to purchase, and can we hire it elsewhere? So that's something we'll be looking at.
Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, there were a couple of others, but no, I'm fine with that one. Thank you.
Thank you. No more questions here. Thank you, Mr Pepperin. And I've had Councillor Courtney has moved that. Can I have someone second? Second by Councillor O'Neill Stevens. I'll put it. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? Carried. Thank you. Cool. Everybody good? I know we've got a quorum here. Everyone's still comfortable in their seats. Very good. Thank you. We'll move on to number 4, which is location for proposed dog park, page 78 to 87. Thank you, Mr Harrington.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Kia ora, everybody. So this is a project that was included in the long-term plan with construction in for next year, and the decision before you today is really just around the location to confirm that. By way of background, we undertook a survey last year of SurveyMonkey, and we got 1,500 responses, which shows quite a considerable amount of interest. And 90% of those respondents said that they would use a dog park, either occasionally or quite frequently. And that supports a lot of the conversations I've had with other councils around the country as well, who say that these parks are actually really successful and well used, and quite a good social opportunity for people as well, and non-dog owners, which was quite a surprise. People who can't own dogs and like to be around dogs. So in relation to the site we're looking at, it's near the bottom of Marsden Valley, opposite the cemetery. There's a map on page 86 of the agenda and a photo on the next page as well. It's relatively underused and we consider it fit for purpose. We spent quite a considerable amount of time looking at other options around Nelson, and really this is the best one, we feel. In fact, there are really few options with this amount of size. You need around a hectare at least. And I also thought it was quite a good location based on the feedback we had, and based on where people lived on that Survey Monkey we did. At least half of them, 56% I think, were from Tahuna or Stoke, so it's convenient for them. Yeah, I think I'll leave it at that, and over to questions.
Thank you, Paul. I've got Matt. I'll just check Councillor Fulton still got good contact there. Cool, thank you. Councillor Laurie and then McGurk.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just through the chair, could you explain to us, Paul, why does it have to be that big?
Okay.
When I was in Christchurch, I visited a couple, and it's quite small compared to some of the ones in Christchurch. The feedback I've had from the dog behaviour expert and the dog owners group is that it needs to be a good size. It needs to be at least around a hectare. And the other bit of feedback is that size should be divided into big dogs and small dogs. So it's not just an agility area, it's an area where people can let their dogs have a good run around. And that's the feedback we've had, and that's comparable to other councils.
Okay, I've got a couple of more questions through the chair, if it's okay. What will be our ongoing maintenance costs for this?
It's not a huge maintenance burden for this. It's fencing and it's mowing an area we're already mowing. So it's just the fencing would be the additional maintenance really. And there's a car parking area which we just have in gravel and a rubbish bin and a water thing as well. But those things will be high quality and I don't think it would be a considerable maintenance burden.
Okay, and based on those numbers from the Survey Monkey, how many actual people do you think with their dogs are likely to be using it once we start it? Through the chair.
At the beginning of this process, I would concede I was a sceptic, but I think it would be quite well used. All the dog parks that I've visited, which is 2 in Christchurch and the one in Blenheim, were busy. There were 4 or 5 people at them at the time that I visited.
Okay.
So my view is that it would be quite well used.
So, Mr. Chairman, I've been a sceptic about this as well, but one person who wasn't a sceptic about it was former Nelson City Councillor Ian Barker, long-serving member of this council, who championed this cause for many years. So I'd like to suggest that if we go ahead with this, that we name our dog park Barker Park.
I like your style, Councillor Laurie.
I think he'd approve.
Can't do that.
So I'm putting it out there.
It's still alive. It's still alive.
I second that. That's great. That's great. That is good. That's legendary. Yeah. Thank you. Any other words of wisdom there, Councillor Laurie?
That's all for now.
Thank you. I'd seriously ask us to consider that. Councillor McGurk, if we can.
Yeah. That's a hard act to follow. Drawing attention to the land status and the Reserves Act, paragraphs 5.9 to 5.2. I've seen the report. It's currently under the Reserves Act. It's a local purpose Esplanade Reserve. Is turning us part of this into a dog park consistent with that in terms of is the purpose of the local purpose reserve altered significantly that we have to go through a Reserves Act hearing and jumping through all those hoops?
Through the chair, no. The fact that it's a local purpose reserve gives us more flexibility. So
even though it's designated as an Esplanade Reserve?
It's classified as an Esplanade Reserve for our maintenance purposes, but it's not. We've had a legal review of it as well, and
so it's reserved for local purposes.
Yeah, the way that it's been taken and the way that it's come to council it means it's more flexible than if it was a classified reserve.
So we'd have to put any kind of any further designation. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. I've got Councillor Noonan, Councillor Brand.
Thank you, and through the chair. Look, I'm just looking at the funding, and I know it's contingent on being approved for capital funding in the annual plan, so it's got to go through another hoop or two. Are you absolutely confident that you're going to get this done for the costings that you've got there?
Through the chair, yes. The funding that we've sought through the annual plan is ample. It should come in under that. It was just being generous, and because we didn't want to have to come back and ask for more afterwards. But the dog park in Renwick was 120,000 in total, and so we've got a little bit of a contingency.
Does the Marlborough one have car parking?
Yes, it does.
Okay, that's because I know car parking can cost a lot. Just regarding the car park, then that's the other question that I have. Is it going to be away from the entrance of the Marsden Cemetery?
Through the chair, yes, there's an existing access way in there already, and it's quite a bit past the Marsden Cemetery.
Is that shown on the map? I couldn't see.
Yes. Yep. It's basically on the far right-hand side, if that makes sense, where the boundary. That's the car park. Yeah. Yep.
Entries down from the northeast, is it, somewhere?
Sorry, the eastern side. So if you're looking at the map orientated in landscape view, it's on the far right-hand side. With that red boundary of the red area is the access way.
Thank you, because I have seen a lot of cars parked near the entrance to the cemetery, so that would be ideal. So I'm just checking that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Got Brand, Courtney.
Thank you, through the chair. I'd actually like to move this recommendation and go into debate, if that's okay.
Okay, I'll allow Councillor Courtney for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through to Paul. Paul, you say here on 9.2 that on page 83 of your report that construction of the dog park will be undertaken in this year, more or less. Is that correct? 2021?
Through the chair, this calendar year, it's achievable. It's really dependent on the capital projects team's work priorities, but it's not a huge undertaking. So it's potentially, yep.
Well, I've got to ask the question. Is this project out of sequence? I mean, it seems to have moved rapidly up the projects list to the point where it's going to be maybe completed 2021 year. So my question is it out of sequence? Because quite frankly, I'm wrestling with myself because I'm thinking of a youth park. And that type of thing, and they've been waiting for decades, and here we are talking about a dog park, and it goes through with such speed. And the dogs I've spoken to, I've been on the back beach, and the dogs love it there. Happy as they could possibly be, but can you just explain to me why this has moved so rapidly through the projects list?
So through the chair, this is a project that was put on the long-term plan for year 2, which starts in July this year. So the construction is scheduled to happen between July this year and June next year. Because it's a fairly straightforward project, it may be one that we can undertake at the first part of that year.
So where does in respect of the youth park, say some youth facility, where does that sit in comparison to this as far as starting goes or finishing or whatever?
Okay, Roger.
Thank you, through the chair. So just to address the question of the relative priorities between, say, this project and the youth park, they are quite different. There's a high degree of consensus around the inputs to this project, what is desired by the public, what is desired around the council table because it's in the long-term plan, and subject to agreement at this meeting, we'll have agreement on a location. What we don't have for a youth park is a high degree of consensus yet around a location and an outcome for that. And I think the council and other stakeholders in the community are conscious that that hasn't yet been delivered. But we continue to accord that all due priority. But there is certainly no effort by the staff the officers to push this ahead of other important things. It is a pretty uncomplicated thing that can be achieved. Thank you.
Thank you for that, and I've put a little bit of mine in these, Councillor Corney, as in Councillor Laurie put in his report at the committee, his committee, that we've made some good steps forward on that, which hopefully will be something coming back to council for us to input further on, hopefully very shortly. Thank you. Councillor Fulton has the questions, and then we've got a mover.
Yes, thank you, through the chair. Yes, my question, thank you for the report. My question is around, when you've done your analysis, you've included Tahuna residents as well as Stoke residents in terms of opportunities as a place to go to. Why would Tahuna residents go there as opposed to going to the back beach? I'm just trying to understand. I'm not a dog owner, so would people who live in Tahuna opt to go to this dog park as opposed to opting to go to the back beach?
Yeah, that's a good question. Through the chair, I was really just trying to draw a line between the city centre and Atawai and Tahuna and Stoke as a geographical proximity convenience factor.
Thank you.
Okay, so in that case, Paul, like I can understand that it's probably really important for Stoke residents because they're not close to the back beach, but is it something which people want because it's fenced, or is it something that people want because they have the freedom to allow dogs to exercise, in which case the back beach does achieve that for Tahuna residents?
Through the chair, yeah, the key difference is the fencing and having an area where a dog can run around and not get away.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I've got Councillor Brand's moved the Barker Dog Park. Can I have do we have a seconder? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Rainey. Very good. So we've got thank you, Mr. Harrington. So we've got here a recommendation that's been moved for receiving this. As you understand, this goes into the moving into the plan for further movement forward. So that opens us up to debate. Thank you. Councillor Laurie.
Thank you. So I'll speak in support of the recommendation, but as I said earlier, I have been a sceptic about this project and I do still have some concerns about it. And my fundamental concerns relate to a question that Councillor Fulton was asking a short time ago, which is why would you take a dog to a place like this when we have the Mai Tai, when we have the dog beach and all these places, which are fantastic, and I'm a dog owner. And the reason that I've been told by people who want this facility is because they cannot control their dogs off the lead by voice command. They need to know that when they take their dog off the lead, when the dog goes for it, the dog's not going to run off across the road or run into a children's playground or do something like that. And they want the security of that fencing. And so this is an example of me showing I have an open mind on council, because I was really kind of opposed to this before, but I accept that it will bring a lot of happiness to people, so I'm prepared to support it. But I do need to express my concerns that I hope that this doesn't encourage people to be less responsible when it comes to the training of their dogs. Because in my opinion, if you're going to own a dog, you need to be able to control it by voice off the lead, if you can. And I accept that there are older people in our community and potentially the people who are disabled now, who live with disabilities in our community, for whom that may not be as easy. But yeah, it's really, really important that people take their responsibilities as dog owners seriously. It is really important that they take their dogs to puppy school. It's really important that they get their dogs socialised, and I think this will help with the socialisation of dogs, which is good. And by that I mean dogs getting on with other dogs. It's really, really important. But I emphasise again, as we do this, I think we have to do it at the same time. We have to strengthen our calls for members of the public to take their responsibilities as dog owners and their responsibilities to train their dogs very seriously.
Thank you, Councillor Laurie. Councillor Brand, sorry, my apologies. Councillor Brand moved it, so should have had the first option. Right reply still is valid.
Thank you, through the chair. I'd just like to acknowledge all the thought and care that has been applied in this process, and to my knowledge, it first came to attention to me and other councillors back in 2012, possibly earlier, just in response to Councillor Fulton's about the back beach. The back beach actually offers a different experience for dog owners to what a dog park and agility park can actually offer. And in relation to Councillor Laurie's concern about owner responsibility and dog behaviour, a dog park actually increases the burden onto the dog owner to require them to have better control and manage their dog's behaviour in a social area. So I would just like to say that I am in support of this recommendation. We hear a lot about the climate change lens. However, this is an example where we as a council are applying the role, looking at activities through a social wellbeing lens to improve social wellbeing and outcomes for our community. A dog park falls into this area as good design and well-constructed facilities will provide the social interactions for humans and dogs, as well as physical activity and a sense of community for a wide group of people within our community. And also for the older people, which Nelson has been identified as the region with a high older people density. Dog parks do provide the opportunity to reduce social isolation, promote physical activity and safety. There is plenty of research that supports this. Also, to be mindful of, as a region, we are growing as a region and areas are becoming more restrictive to dogs on off-leash areas, and we are currently reviewing a number of these areas. Other points to consider are that we have had a high number of public feedback and engagement requesting this facility. We have already invested funding in appropriate location investigation and also seeking expert advice in this area. And we've already set community expectation. And it is great that the public are not wanting to put the pressure on the resources within our central city area. So thank you.
Thank you for that. No other debate? I'll put it. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? Carried. Thank you. Okay, that moves us on to the quarterly report. So we're looking at pages 88. Thank you, Rosie and Paul, and by means, Andrew, if you need it. So what we'll do, we'll just adjourn. Just adjourn for a moment. Councillor Corney, are you staying with us?
No, I'm just going to put to 12. I will be back.
So we've just we've lost the quorum. We're fine, are we? Because we gained one, did we? Oh, very good, fair enough. Okay. Fair enough. We're just going to have a little adjournment, have a break. Is about to make a presence as well. And Councillor Fulton, I'm just acknowledging you're there and we're about to reconvene. Just hope all good at your end. Thank you. So moving on to quarterly report. Thank you.
Good morning, councillors. So with the quarterly report, just one error I'd like to bring your attention to. In 6.1, we've referred to the Great Taste Trail and it should have been the copper mine. So just to bring that bit of clarity there. I also just wanted to focus on just the date that it is through just to the 31st of December. So an awful lot has happened since then. Where possible, we've updated, but some of these projects have had quite a bit of movement since this report.
Thank you for that. So I noted for that. So you could conscious that's to December. Some stuff is not part of this report or will be, but you will have the best ability if suitable. Yep.
Sure. And just happy to take any questions.
Cool. Thank you. So take it as read. Have any questions for the quarterly report? Councillor Rainey.
I just have one really regarding 6.4. Sorry, just regarding 6.4. It's a question and potentially sort of a comment really. Why is the marina a closed account? And do we all as a council really fundamentally understand that, what that actually means? And is there some opportunity for us to consider why it is a closed account, why it isn't just treated like any other recreational asset?
Thank you.
Through the chair, that's a great question and potentially not for us to answer at this stage. I think certainly that would be a really great question for Nikki Harrison. But we could certainly go away and do a bit of investigation on why that's classified as a closed account for you and come back.
Thank you, through the chair. I'll just add a comment. Yes, the history of that, I think we'd have to dig into and understand. We were discussing yesterday in the workshop on the activity management plan, some of the councillors' thoughts around the governance model for the marina, and perhaps we could pick that up as part of that and get an understanding of it and follow through there.
It came up in the workshop. Thank you. Any questions? I'm also conscious that Councillor Noonan's on her way and she's usually quite keen to have a few questions on this topic. Any other discussion on that? Councillor McGee.
Yeah, I was just, I won't worry about the one, but on page 112, you're talking about the Montebello Village Walkway and the budget blowout there down to geotechnical issues. What's the issue there, please?
Oh, that's a good question. Through the chair, the Montebello Walkway project, it connects a stage 5 of quite a large subdivision down into the Ngāwhatu Valley. It's quite a steep hill. When they began excavating for the walkway, they found a whole lot of colluvium material which was unable to be used as fill.
What sort of material?
Colluvium. So it's just really rocky, dusty stuff that can be compacted properly. So the geotechnical part of the process was having a geotechnical monitor on site, and they said that can't be used. It's going to have to be taken away and disposed of, and we're going to have to bring proper fill in, and that fill had to be taken up from the bottom. It was quite a long and laborious process. So there was a variation to the contract in order to cover that.
So whereabouts is you got the? I'm assuming this is the one that runs along the top end of Orphanage Creek, goes sort of wiggles around a couple of S-bend, pops up the reserve, and then heads up.
It's Sunningdale. Oh God, is it Sunningdale? Sorry, it's if you're going up Ngāwhatu Valley.
Yep.
Sorry, the name of the street escapes me. I think it might be Sunningdale, but it's on an intersection and it's a steep bank, and it's some redwoods at the bottom. I can get the address for you and come back to you if you like, but it's one block and the walkway zigzags up to...
It's just inside the entrance and you make basically a right turn.
It's a fair wee way up. It's past... It's the new subdivision that's happening.
Okay, I
can come and show you.
Okay, that'd be great.
Thank you for that. Welcome, Councillor Noonan. We're just doing questions on the quarterly report. I thought you might have a few there. You're good? Cool, thank you. No worries. No more questions. Take this read. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you for that. Very good, very thorough. Not yet, no. Can I have someone move? Move by Councillor McGee. Can I have second it? Councillor Brand. Thank you. Any debate? I'll put it. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you. That is all for the public. We've moved into confidential. Can I have someone move us on that? Councillor Rainey, Councillor O'Neill-Stevens. We'll just pause a moment there. I'll put those in favour. Those against? Carried. So we're about to move into confidential. I'll just give it a moment for staff and gallery